birthday to you.
Hey, everybody. I want to welcome you to a very special episode of the podcast where we're going to be going over COVID loans and what that means for business brokers trying to sell businesses. Right now, we have a huge wave of baby boomers looking to sell their business. And aside from the typical problems, such as them being all run on paper and not having everything documented the way that this generation and current businesses like to do, we have a whole new wave of problems in the form of COVID loans, SBA loans, liens, the ones where you weren't supposed to pay them back. Don't worry about it. Here's free money to keep your business running. And of course, we all knew in the back of our mind, there's got to be a catch. Well, it's happened to me now 7 times this year alone, where business listings that we've taken on, we've gone to sell them and come to find out right up to closing that they had these COVID loans that they didn't necessarily need to pay back. In fact, some of my clients attempted to pay them back and their payments were rejected. But there is apparently, and I'll let the attorney explain this part further, but there is apparently a due on sale clause whereby the government is preventing people from double dipping. Essentially, we have paid you to keep your business running, but you can't then go and sell your business for top dollar and keep both funds, which also makes sense. So the unfortunate thing and why I ran into Jan as an attorney on a closing in a very urgent situation is many of my business owners, in fact, all 7 that I ran into this year, their CPAs even have encouraged them, this is not a loan you need to disclose. This is not a loan that even can be repaid, so don't worry about it. So it wasn't disclosed to the buyer, the seller, or me, the broker, throughout the entire process. It was only when an attorney in the closing got involved that we even found out about it. So without further ado, I'd like you to introduce yourself, Jan, and talk about your experience and what you think is going to happen with all these COVID loans in the next couple of years.
Well, thanks, Kevin. Yes, so the SBA loans and the mess that was created by the pandemic started with, I think you all remember the offer of these PPP loans, the Paycheck Protection Program. And those were the desired loans in the 2020, 2021, where the idea was you're not going to have to pay them back. And then the rules kept changing. As I don't know if you recall, everybody clamored to get these loans, and they continue to be unsecured in their truest form. And those people that obtained the loans and performed properly and used the funds properly and then went back and applied for forgiveness, they generally were forgiven. But at the same time, and didn't get as much attention, there were these economic injury disaster loans, these EIDL loans. And they're a little bit of a different animal. Those loans, if they were for more than $25,000 in principal, had collateral. You didn't have to personally guarantee, which is wonderful, but the SBA went and obtained secured interest in all these businesses, all of their assets, basically. I mean, the list is just comprehensive. It's deposits, it's everything, accounts payable, you name it, but certainly all the assets of the entity running the business.
Wow.
So that creates a problem because, frankly, from my experience, a lot of these borrowers in dire straits that were, just clamoring to get the money that was available, they didn't know this. They many times, I think, Kevin, as you mentioned, they don't even have copies of these loan documents. They signed a lot of them electronically, and whether they were provided or if they even have documents, but they don't know about this collateral, and they don't even, frankly, know what the terms of their loan are. One important feature that you need to know in order to go obtain a payoff from the SBA is you're supposed to know the loan number. Well, unfortunately, none of these borrowers know the loan number. That's just something that that was a detail that was missed in the process. In the mad dash to go get this money, people weren't paying attention. So what do you do if you have a client that wants to sell their business? What you can do on your own, if you want, is there is a website. It's floridaucc.com, and on there you can search the business name. And what business name is it that you search? Well, you need to, there's a little cross-referencing required, but I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Florida Sun Biz, where you can go on and enter the name. You can either enter the individual's name as an officer, or you can enter the name of the entity that you think is running the business. And it has DBAs and whatnot, but that search will then pull up their certificate that shows you the name of that borrower or that entity or that business. And that's the name that you want to search on this UCC search. And when you enter that name in the search, it should show you every UCC under the name of that business. It's available to everybody. And that's that. And you'll find, if they had an EIDL loan, they're going to show SBA UCC. And that, unfortunately, is very little information. We've been fortunate enough, they don't put on these UCCs the loan numbers, but we have been successful in sending the UCC via email to the SBA and saying, this is the loan that we want to pay off. Unfortunately, it's the bureaucracy is crazy. It all depends on who picks up your file and how helpful they want to be. You get the random one that says, if I don't have the loan number, I'm not going to process it. So then you move on, you find somebody else. You just have to be persistent, and you can access a payoff through the SBA either by a portal or by email or by a phone number. Phone numbers get you nowhere. So we email, we use the portal, and we just work the system as much as we can, because it takes them, there's no rushing them. They take 7 to 10 days. And then a lot of times they'll stall and say, well, you don't have a loan number, but you push back and there's a way to get it from them. Now, you may get a notice and your owner may say, oh, my SBA, my loan was charged off, so I don't have to pay it. That, unfortunately, is not true. If it's charged off, that simply means that the lender moved it from column A to column B in their accounting, meaning they don't think it's performing, but the SBA is definitely going to pursue these loans. They're not going to allow, they're going to go after the collateral. The one good thing about the EIDL loans is, again, your business owners aren't individually liable. They didn't have to personally guarantee. So it is the debt of the entity. But if there was fraud in what the funds were used for or things like that, there can be personal liability for these business owners. So right. If it wasn't put back into the business in accordance with the SBA rules, there's some liability for them. You really, really want them to get these paid off, not to ignore them, because the assets can't be conveyed cleanly without getting this payoff.
So the stories of people going to jail, primarily those are the people that misappropriated the funds
and committed fraud in the application.
Wow.
Those people as well. Originally this EIDL loan was going to be $100,000 and it was supposed to be forgiven, but they came back and said, oh, like $1,000 per employee. They really reduced the benefits of this loan, but it was a very popular loan because it was fast. They turned these funds around very quickly. But unfortunately, a lot of these people, they had these bankers signing them up, but they didn't get good counsel. They just didn't really understand what the consequences of these are. They don't, on these types of loans, they will not have a lien on their home. A lot of SBA loans, like the 7A loans, the standard, they do get a second mortgage on the home. They don't have that with these loans, but this blanket lien on all the business assets is a real stumbling block.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah, well, and you brought up too, I have clients that aren't selling their business, but I've now started asking the question and they say, yeah, I have a letter saying it's been charged off. So they think They're free and clear.
Yeah, no, it's clear that the government guaranteed these, so the government's going to go back after these, whether the bank does or doesn't. The bank has just moved it into another column in their books. That's all that really means.
Wow. So, and I'm curious what, if any, details without specifics we can share about the case we're going through right now. But I have a few businesses where the loans were small enough that we were able to negotiate with the buyer and the seller. One was like 50K. The seller came down 25, the buyer came up 25. We were able to satisfy everything. I do have some situations where the loan is a larger dollar amount than the sale price of the business, obviously making that very problematic. Is there anything that you can share about this or other cases that you've gone through recently?
Well, we can always try to reduce the amount that's due. Like if there just isn't the assets there that's going to make the government whole, they will work with you on a reduced payoff amount. There's no question that you need to try to at least achieve a lower payoff. The other thing, unfortunately, is that if it's just that entity, if they don't have any other loans or whatnot, they may just have a judgment against that entity in the public records forever,
Right.
or they can declare bankruptcy, for that entity, not personal bankruptcy. So it
Now,
would affect
explain why they can't just convert to an asset sale.
Oh, because it is on everything that is owned by this business, all the assets, everything, you name it. There's nothing that has escaped their list of what they've got a security interest in.
Right.
So it doesn't matter who owns it. It's attached to the property.
Wow, that's incredible. And so they just signed off on these blanket,
Yes.
all-encompassing.
Yes.
Jeez.
Yes.
Louise.
And it'll list the name of the business, and then under the secured party, it lists the U.S. Small Business Administration, the one in Alabama. Not a lot of help.
So, okay, at the very least, all of these are documented when we do our searches. So even if the business owner does not disclose, there's not a scenario where we couldn't find out, correct?
Correct.
Okay, good.
It takes some research, but yeah, you can find it.
Okay. Well, can you tell us more about yourself and your background and promote your law firm as well?
Oh, I've been practicing for decades. I'm from Florida. I grew up here. I love the lifestyle here. I work with a large law firm. We have the benefit of having, like, I think there's 250 attorneys here, all up and down the Northeast of the United States. We cover everything. We don't do criminal law, and we don't do family law, and we don't do personal injury, but we do just about every other type of law. So if an issue comes up, which that's the wonderful thing about practicing law, is that every transaction is different. We have the depth in order to get people involved that can answer questions and resolve the problem for the clients. But for me, I love transactions. I'm not a litigator. I like solving problems. I don't like, combating with people. I find it a challenge when you're dealing with somebody with the SBA. I mean, you just have to be persistent, but you always have to be nice and make sure, you get more with honey than you do with vinegar. I love the challenge, and I love the people I meet. I mean, it's just not every day that you can have a new experience every time you walk in the door to your job, and that's what I like about it. So I would welcome the opportunity to help anybody solve any of these problems. I mean, they are solvable, and there's not always one right answer, but it takes, you got to think out of the box sometimes.
What were some of your more favorite creative solutions over the years?
Oh, okay. I had a closing one time where a business was being sold, and it was a problem because the partners wouldn't agree. And finally, we got everybody in agreement, and it was the day of closing. And a roofing company showed up to the property and removed the roof, and it was the wrong property. And so we decided at closing that the buyer decided to take an assignment of the litigation against the roofing company and close, and they got a brand new roof, and they got the business, the property they wanted to buy. So sometimes you just have to, put yourself in their shoes and say, what's the best case scenario? So they got a brand new roof and they got what they wanted. So it worked out.
Wow. Oh my gosh. How long did it take them to fix that, put the roof back on?
It took a long while. Unfortunately, they didn't need the building right away. Sometimes the facts are in your favor and sometimes not. So
sometimes not. Right. Awesome. Well, okay. It's particularly hard to find a strong business closing attorney. So I'm very glad that I found you. Very glad that you're helping us through some rough waters here, some uncharted territory, so to speak, for us. So thank you so much for your time. Unless there's anything else that you'd like to mention to people, I know that attorney's time is extremely valuable, so I don't want to take up too much of it. Are there any other cautionary tales or things that we as business brokers or even commercial real estate need to be mindful of?
Well, one thing I was thinking, and I don't know if it comes up with you very often, but not every business is a Florida business. So when you go to check UCC,
Right.
so the UCC, it's just a strange nuance. It didn't used to be this way. The UCC has to be filed in the state where the business was incorporated. So like many times we have people move from up north and bring their corporation or their LLC, and they'll register it with the state of Florida. So you can search it on the Sunbiz and you'll see it, but it'll say it's a foreign corporation. And you would think, well, then I'll just check Florida and see if there's a UCC, but that's not the case. So if they moved from Michigan and they brought their LLC and they started a restaurant and they registered it with the state of Florida, that UCC will be filed up in the registry, the UCC registry in Michigan, not in Florida.
Wow. And that's big right now with everybody coming down to Florida. Wow. I'm glad you mentioned that. Well, okay. So what does happen? It is bankruptcy a get out of jail free card for these people. What exactly does happen when they go the route of bankruptcy, and how does that impact the sale of the business? Could bankruptcy prevent the sale of a business? Do they need to wait?
Yeah, they could, but usually the court will appoint usually a receiver and determine what's in the best interest of the business. So yeah, it's an extra step. And it depends on what type of bankruptcy. You can have a Chapter 7 or Chapter 11. Chapter 7 means we're extinguishing all the debts that the court will allow. Chapter 11 is a reorganization. So it just depends on what type of bankruptcy, and that depends on the personal situation of the borrower. They may have other debts that they don't want to, default under. But it is definitely, it's there for a reason. Bankruptcy is a very viable option, and there's very good bankruptcy attorneys that will help them at a very, reasonable price to get them so they can start over. That's the whole point of this, is that people, they have the 7 years of bad credit, but then they can turn around and start anew. It's definitely a good option to look at.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks again, Jan. Really appreciate your time. And guys, please, if you're in the Florida area, reach out to Jan for your business closings. It has been an absolute pleasure to work with her. The client loves her. We're definitely going to be using Jan a lot more in the future.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Happy birthday to